pin anything for you.
Everything is done, and we are live streaming with Josh Kronfeld. G'day, Josh.
How are you doing, Pat?
Yeah, good man. How you doing?
Yeah, an interesting swing on life at the moment, that's for sure. Kids involved 10/7, whatever you call it,
24/7.
and 24/7, yeah. And the wife manically trying to rescue her business. So
What does
yeah,
she do?
she's a hairdresser.
All right. Wow. Yeah.
So COVID level 2 is distinctly interesting.
Yep.
And so for the last 3 weeks, it's been a mad rush trying to get to a stage where she can be up and running and working efficiently within the new
Yep.
guidelines, which are pretty stringent. Um, I mean, I guess it's all safety and care and respect to everyone, but yeah, no, it's been full on, and it's and for her, she's got 15 odd staff, and
Right.
so that's they're her family too.
Yeah.
Crikey, we deal with all their bloody dramas, and she's the mum of it all. So uh, you know, um,
So she owns the salon, the place, and the
yeah.
she.
So she's Tony and Guy, and she's pretty internationally involved.
Yep.
Uh, and Tony and Guy, with the flavour that's happened across the world, it's been massive impact on them, and so they've always been very proactive education, but they've just gone to a whole other level.
Yeah. I bet. Wow.
Um, so she's been Skyping and Zoom calls most nights, most mornings, across the ditch, and speaking to Australia, Asia, and UK, and they're all coming together and putting, um, just offering this pool of advice of how to manage and how we move into the next step. And in
Yeah.
some ways, New Zealand is a little bit ahead of everyone, you know, in terms of how we're dealing with this next stage.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, out of Italy and Spain, there was a whole different swing of what they were having to deal with in terms of their lockdown and where they were and how they were managing it. So, an incredible pool of information and education, and meantime, they've also been doing all this crazy upskilling, so all their
Right.
elites and Bronwyn's from that world. So, to give you an example of probably where I sit in the scheme of rugby internationally, she's one of their superstars and from back in the day, So
She's the Dan Carter of that world, is she?
I don't know if Dan Carter would be the right version, but I'm sure it would be somewhere up there. It's funny. You go to I've been to a few of their gigs and nobody knows who I am, and they all know who she is. So it's kind of
cool.
it's a bit of a role reversal. So it's nice, but it also, I think that's why it's worked for us as a couple too, because she understands what it is to be in the limelight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so she manages the crazy fans that just pop up and out of nowhere and want photos and want some time, and they want to say hello, and she manages that really well and understands that and embraces it.
It's
And so when I'm having to take photos for her,
Yeah, it's cool.
hairdressing, it's quite cute.
How does that feel for you? I just to kind of echo back what you're saying. It's not necessarily for me, but my old man, part of the Catholic Church, and they literally talk about the old boys network. So everyone in Auckland involved in that world sort of knows my dad's name, and he's got a very recognisable name. His first name is Bede,
Yeah.
and when I was working for ZB, my sisters used to call me occasionally and talk about how it's gone full circle. And all their life they got, oh, are you Bede's daughters? Are you Bede's daughters? And it flipped to, are you related to Pat? And it happened the other way, and it started going the other way. I never really experienced it, but Mum and Dad experienced it when they were playing a golf tournament at Mangawhai Heads. and someone saw the surname and listened to me. And of course, I was doing nighttime stuff, so it was all the oldies were listening to me, and were quite chuffed that they got to meet my parents. And it's funny to have the complete, like you're saying, the sort of reversal that everyone knew the father's name, and then it started to even though I'm not saying I had a big audience, but it slowly shifted, and my siblings were getting the opposite message. What did it feel like to you to be sort of the one? Because obviously, especially at your peak when you're
Oh,
an All Black, getting the kids coming up for autographs and stuff. What's it like?
I think it's only that awkward when someone comes up for an autograph and they said not actually for you. No, no. Look, I think it's fantastic. I actually love scenarios where people have no idea who I am. You know, I game a little bit,
Yep.
and since the lockdown, I've kind of probably been involved in that a little bit more than I normally do. And so I've been talking to people in Australia, and so there's online at one time in a Discord room together.
Hmm.
There could be like 30 odd people, and the chat's always quite intriguing. But they often sometimes get onto rugby and whatnot, and they're bagging people or talking stuff like that, and they have no idea who I am.
Wow.
So I kind of like that anonymity. I kind of it's quite fun for me when people don't know who you are, you know, because you can just. Not that I'd like to think the Josh Kronfeld persona is not any different to what's sitting in front of you now,
Yep.
other than maybe in the media light or whatever. I'm a little bit more aware of my P's and Q's.
Yeah.
I try to be that person the whole time,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I don't try and present on one hand this person and on the other who I'm hanging out with my friends. I try and make them the same people a little bit.
I used to tell people when they used to talk about doing presenting, whether it was TV or radio, I would always say the best kind of a presenter is that they're completely themselves, but it's just like they're themselves on a cup of coffee. They're just kind of 5% more because you've got to be a little bit bigger to do it, but you are basically yourself. It makes me laugh as well to think about the not being recognised thing. We had in, his name eludes me, but a filmmaker and a director who made a series, a film about Ed Hillary, and he was a guy who
Yeah.
also had the lucky occasion to actually film Ed Hillary through the 70s and stuff. So he'd known him for a long time and spent a lot of time with him. And he told a story once of being up a mountain. It might have even been in the Himalayan region, with Ed Hillary walking, and this American tourist came along and told Ed Hillary that wasn't the right way to use a pickaxe, an ice axe, and gave him a lesson. And apparently Sir Ed just sat there gently and let him give him the lesson and thanked him. And this guy walked on, not realizing he'd just given the lesson to the guy who was the first up Mount Everest. It was a hilarious story. But ever the gentleman, Ed just let him do it and thanked him for his time, and off he went, this guy.
Yeah, look, I think it's beautiful. The funniest thing I think in that respect, people recognise you. Like, people still think I'm Anton Oliver, and and I personally, like, visually, you put face to face, we don't look anything alike,
No.
but I think it's posturally, maybe. We've both got that Neanderthal sort of um, hunched over, maybe, big back sort of look, and silverback maybe, and so consequently they just put the two and two together.
Yeah, I mean, I can't understand how that would happen for you guys because obviously being a rugby nut and a sports follower, you're very different people. But I guess you hear it a lot. You hear Elijah Wood saying he gets confused all the time for dude who played Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe. They get each other, people asking, their fans asking both each of them for the other person's autograph because they get confused. So I guess when you see someone that you're not intimately knowledgeable of, you go, I recognise that person. Where do I recognise them from? I've seen them playing rugby. Maybe I saw them at the House of Pain. Oh, it's Anton Oliver. So you kind of put together the story and then come to the wrong conclusion as opposed to knowing exactly who it is because you're, an actual big, fan of the sport, so to speak. So I get it, but it's pretty funny.
I just haven't played it out yet for him.
Have you? Yeah, that's what you do next is you sign an autograph in his name. I heard a story actually with I think it was Elijah Wood saying he sometimes signs Daniel Radcliffe if they ask him. They ask him, I love I love you and whatever in Harry Potter, and so he signs Daniel Radcliffe, and it's Elijah Wood signing the wrong name, which probably is quite a valuable signature, the wrong signature. Hey, so I was thinking as well. I'm sure coming into level two, your wife's business has exploded. I mean, you obviously know Dunedin very well. Down by the cenotaph there's a barber called Bloke, which is where I go to. Haven't had a clipping in 7 weeks, sort of thing. Got in on Monday night at 6 p.m. when they opened up their calendar, and by the time I'd finished the appointment, a week and a half of bookings had filled up. And so I had to wait till the middle of next week to go and see my barber because it just went brrr and just filled up. And that's in a population of 125,000. So I imagine work must be coming out the ears now, mustn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's not. It's not. It's not in the because it can't. They can't go in the same realm of. All right, we need to fit all these people in.
Yep.
Let's open 20 chairs, and let's do back to back 20 chairs. They can't do that.
Yeah.
So what they've had to do because of all the constrictions and the distancing and all that sort of stuff, and how many people can be in the store at one time, it's meant that they have a set number that they can get through in a day.
Okay.
So they've lengthened their days,
Right.
for the same sort of income, I guess, just to get through some of the numbers. And they've like other things like where they, if someone was late, they just everybody just get pushed back, and or they bond together and just get two people on one job, whatever, and get through it. They can't do that anymore. They actually have to say to that person, no, you're late. I'm sorry, you go to the back of the line now. Wow. Because if they do what they do, everybody else gets angry.
Yeah.
And also that like they lose time slots, and it just turns into a debacle. And so they're having to be quite matter of fact and harsh. And of course, everybody assumes too that I'm more important than the other.
Yeah.
And so, like clients are very, aggressive to get that returning back to that beautiful hairdo.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a credit to the quality of the product that they're delivering. But I asked her today, last night when she got home. She left at 6 in the morning and got home just before 9. And I said, "Oh, how'd the day go?" And she said it was incredible. She said it was really smooth. So all the prep that she'd been cracking out for last with her team, they'd have Zoom meetings twice a week, talking about how they were going to manage going into level 2. They had half the team in level 3 with their spacing, so they can open their bubble to get the salon fully cleaned out, repainted, disinfected, all the stations sorted out. So, like they bind up after they've done one client, all the stuff that was used on that client is bound up and taken away and washed. That whole area is fully cleaned out before the next client comes in. So they've had to allow time between clients so that they can get the chairs all disinfected. It's pretty full on. But it's going to be like that for everybody now.
Yeah. Do you think, and maybe not specifically about the salon, but obviously you're involved in business, with your wife, and obviously you're working as well. I'm wondering, is it that at the end of this whole thing, this whole COVID thing, because there will be an end point, what? Well, I think I mean, even if it's,
I can't see how. Aren't we going to just have this roll round again when the next busload comes into town?
Do you mean the same thing or the next one, like the next?
Oh, the next one, or the same thing? Because I mean, this virus doesn't just burn out, does it? It's like another cold. It's like, are we going to see it again next year?
I think that done well, if it is just another cold, I don't mean that from the serious nature of it, because obviously it's far more dangerous and serious, Nicole. But if the analogy is, each season it rolls through, I think that'll. I guess this is what I'm alluding to. What are the business practices and how are they going to change permanently and long term? Are they going to, or will we go back? I mean, obviously, the answer at the moment to what the future holds probably first and foremost lies in the vaccine. But even in saying that, once or if the virus evolves into COVID 2.0, then much like the flu shot, each year it'll deal with the flus that have gone before, but not so much the flus that are coming up. Yeah, maybe this isn't a new
And the
normal.
quality of testing, can you test having a package that tests, and if you've been exposed, that is it picks up the incubation right at the start, not
Mm,
at the end of 14 days. Do you know what I mean? I think that's and that testing be able to be done within 24 hours at a border.
yeah,
That are going to be probably the key indicators. But it's who knows. That's the future. It's just we just got to wait and see.
yeah. It is crazy to think about this. I was talking with a mate in New York last night. He's in New York, not city. He's in New York State, so he's upstate. And he was saying that he's a Kiwi living over there. He was saying that one of the things that he's fearful of, I think he used the word fearful, but thinking about, is what happens if like a superbug turns up because people don't use all their antibiotics and it kind of gets a bit of a resistance. He was sort of saying, what happens if this thing does evolve and then turns into something even worse and then crashes through America as badly as this one has done, but the death rate is up. That's what his concern is. And when he said that, I was like, fuck, this is, thinking about where it could go versus where it is now. That's a bit of a scary thought, actually.
I mean, if you want to chuck scary in, the question is too. Like I've seen different documents that have kind of, and again, it's hearsay, so you can chuck whatever you want into this thought process, but it's what is it? 1,000 times more um, contagious than any of the SARS were. I mean, how does something suddenly come out of nowhere and jump to 1,000 times more aggressive in terms of
Yeah.
contagious? And then also have some, the AIDS virus have that mutation gene. Um, like I think it was they were saying there's, like in terms of being similar, have that quality of being able to mutate um, distinctly related to the AIDS virus. Or how is this suddenly just tuned up and being like that? It,
Yeah.
it says to me that it's not natural. It's not natural evolution.
So when you say it's not natural, what are you thinking that it's are
Oh,
you
it's been manufactured
do you so
somewhere and someone's
so
fucked
you
up.
you lean towards this has been made in a lab?
Yeah, I reckon it's too much of a large jump, mate.
Do you go one step further and say released on purpose, or there's been a terrible accident?
Oh, who would release this on purpose?
Yeah.
The whole world's got to it's got to be an accident. But again, it's theorizing. It's the looking in behind the scenes and and that's where the internet opens stuff up. Like
both
and
good
stuff.
both good and bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Shit,
I mean,
some of the conversations I've
it's
seen
always
online.
yeah. I'm always stunned at what I end up reading or don't read
Yeah.
as well. You get stuff flicked at you from different avenues, and or you're online and you're researching something that you want to buy or find or something like that, and you end up on some site, and next thing you're reading that. I'm always stunned at what you can find. I mean, I reckon the funniest moment that I ever had, and well, not funniest, but I remember when I back in early '90s, so maybe '91 ish, '92, or maybe a bit, no, actually probably a bit later. It was probably about '93.
Mm-hmm.
I just started playing for Otago, and I was making roads and stuff like that, and I bought my first genuine computer, like
Right.
desktop, and had it set up there. And I remember I'd come home and I had a few drinks, and I wasn't ready to go to bed yet. I was home early, and I thought I'll have a play on the computer. So I'm start flitting around and stuff like that. And then at some point in time, I thought, oh, I wonder what happens when you enter your own name it.
Oh yeah.
There's, I hadn't really done anything with the net. This is early days and for me in terms of computers. And so I typed my name in, and for whatever reason, I went through the processes. There was some photos and there was stuff like that, and I ended up in this chat room, and they were talking about whether Josh Kronfeld or Dwayne Monkley were the better player. And I
Really?
was, yeah. And Dwayne Monkley was an amazing player, and in 1993 he probably should have gone away to the World Cup.
Right.
I mean, not to the World Cup, to the UK tour. I thought it was actually a bit of it was just totally wrong. The I remember they took Liam Barry and they never played him, and then they had Mike Brewer, who was already over there, end up stepping into the role. It was just not right ethically, or you pick player who's the best in the country and take him away. And they didn't do that. But anyway, they were just bagging the crap out of me, and it was evil stuff. Like genuinely, like I remember getting off of it and feeling so empty and literally destroyed emotionally.
Wow.
It was just because I was a young person, not really being exposed to any social media at all at that time.
Well, yeah, it didn't exist.
Well, it didn't really exist. No, that's right. And not really having an understanding of who I was as an individual yet. Anyway, I was just come out of uni, I'd been that person in university. I was now working,
Yep.
and as a school teacher at that particular time, and so still just really in the throes of being an adult, and discovering who I was and how I presented, and then to read all this horrendous stuff about they were attacks at how I acted and how I played, and as those chat rooms are.
Sure.
And but it devastated me. So I've kind of worked on the process of ignorance since then. I don't read or listen to anything
I,
since that time.
you hear people often say, profile people often say, "Gosh, if the internet was around when I was going through, like stars of the '80s and '90s, if social media was around." It's kind of hilarious that what people can relate to today, profile people, be them athletes or celebrities or performers or whatever, and they get shit via Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. You got literally the first time you got on the internet, and you got it 30 odd years ago, 28 years ago. That's hilarious. I mean, I can remember the days. You'd fire up your 486, you'd load up Netscape, and take you 7 minutes to get on the internet with it chirping away there in the background. And the first thing you see is, oh, Josh Kronfeld, he's a bit of a is like, oh, what's this? This is a very personalised thing, isn't it? There's internet on your MIRC chat room. Remember all those days? That's crazy.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, but you talk about that social media thing, like, and how they people can get dragged right under the bus with it. It's evil. It's tough. Like I my concern now is like, how do I manage it with my kids?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. Like my greatest belief is with any of that social media stuff. Um, if you present yourself in a positive and you're open about how you are and what you think in your life, and you're constructing constructive and positive in terms of how you talk about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, and you're open to saying hello to people and shaking hands and smiling and waving and recognizing people around you, 9 times out of 10, whenever any negativity comes out, you walk out the other side really, really well.
Yeah.
But that's me as a strong individual now who knows where I sit in the world. But young kids who have no idea where they are or who they are or what they present or represent. It's I don't know. I just don't know how to manage through that minefield. You know?
There's a and I've talked about this a dozen times on this podcast. People will be getting sick of it, but there's a very, 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 very good clip on YouTube by a guy called Simon Sinek, and he's talking about millennials in the workplace. And I would suggest anyone, it's probably 18 minutes long in total. I would suggest anybody go and look up Simon Sinek. I think it's Sinek, millennials in the workplace, and he's sitting at a chair with another guy interviewing him. And I show it to my kids quite often because there's about an 8 minute chunk of it, which is talking about these things, and talking about what they do to your brain, and talking about how, they're designed to set off the same synapses in your head that alcohol and cocaine do, and all these things that come with it. As a parent as well, I think this is where we need to come in. Although, an 18 or no, 18's too older, 14-year-old will often know more about the internet and what to do and where to go than their parent does in this day and age, which has sort of always been the way the teenagers have sort of led the technology revolution. But I think it's okay as a parent as well to go, we need to figure out how to navigate this safely. If in the old days, if we were jumping on a boat and going somewhere, we would find the path that was safest to get from point A to point B. And I think that's no real different today when it comes to things like the internet, social media, and technology. We didn't allow our kids to be put on things like school websites and that kind of stuff. They could say, Child X from room 13. That would be fine, but we wouldn't have Child X and the surname from room 13. And it was quite simply because my kids, your kids, probably Gen Y, maybe Gen Z, are the first real generation that are going to have a digital footprint their whole lives. And I was of the opinion, as were my kid's mum, that they didn't need that footprint when they were 8. They could wait till secondary school to start their footprint off. And I just hope that as parents, generally in society, we still have enough maybe nous about us that we can go, I think in society sometimes we kind of go, this is just what all the kids are doing. We just, and they give their 8-year-olds a smartphone. I'm just like, I hope we can be smarter than that. And the thing about the Simon Sinek clip, which is amazing, is when he relates things like these smartphones to alcohol and how it works in your brain, he basically says you wouldn't open up your alcohol cupboard to your 11-year-old and say, help yourself. And he kind of encourages to treat it the same way, which I think at the very least is worth at least taking on board. Some people will disagree with them, some people won't do it, but it's worth watching and having. I think more knowledge is always better than less knowledge, in my opinion.
Well, my youngest is 10. He does all the troubleshooting for his mother. Like from Zoom through to everything. The oldest will have a will set it up for the younger brother. The younger brother just doesn't have any idea or concept with the technology, but the oldest has embraced it. And I remember when he was 8, he was already talking about getting his own iPhone.
Right.
And I said, no, you're not having a phone until you're 16.
Yeah.
And dude, that went down like a lead balloon.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I've not been able to understand why there's such a drive to have a phone. It's kind of astounding. I mean, I guess I get it a little bit. I remember back in the again, we go back to the early 90s when a telecom, I think, came on board with the All Blacks, and they gave us all out the wee Nokia bricks.
Yep.
And with an account and all that sort of stuff. And I left mine in my box for about, I don't know, maybe 2 months. 3 months. It was at like some launch at the start of the year, so we weren't getting back till June or whatever. And I carried on doing what I was doing, surfing and playing footy and going to work. And anyway, they suddenly got this phone call. And they said, where have you been? I says, I've been here. And they says, well, we've been trying to get hold of you for the last month. And I says, well, what do you need? And they told me, and I says, oh, okay. And they go, where's your your phone. I says, oh, I haven't opened it up. And, and they basically bullied me in. And then I realized the reason why they'd given me it. Because it meant by having the cell phone, they could get hold of me whenever they wanted.
Yep.
And also, once I was tied to it and started texting and all that sort of stuff, you know, that was my world. You know, so I hate phones. You
I
know,
I I, I re-
I last on social media maybe once. You know, I've 2 weeks on Facebook. I managed,
right.
and Instagram has been a lot longer. But again, I just go through. Oh, I'm really good, I'm really good, really good, and then for another week and a half, nothing goes on.
I remember Vodafone bringing out an advert, and I can remember it really clearly because it kind of echoes what you're saying, where they were talking about, it was this big thing about, you don't have to have an office phone anymore. Don't worry about office phones. We'll put everything through to your cell phone. Your office will be with you 24/7. And I went, fuck that. I don't want my office with me 24/7. I want to be answering. And I mean, this was maybe the late 90s, and now we kind of all do have our offices with us. But the initial reaction was, be tied to your workplace permanently. We can help you with that. Isn't it great? And I just thought, no, it's not great. It's not great to sort of do that. I mean, it's very different now because I've got clients and I've got people I help with things, and they call me often, but there's still boundaries. I still go out with my kids and I leave my phone at home. I still, will have it charging in the bedroom if I'm out in the other room, and if it rings, I don't answer it. I'm very good. In fact, I drive my kids crazy. I'll show you, because I don't know if you can see the messages down there. You see the little red line by the messages? You probably can't see it. Anyway, it says 209. So I've got at the moment 209 unanswered text messages because, saying goodbye at the end of a message or responding to someone immediately is not necessarily always important. But yeah, it's the technology is amoral, right? It's neither good nor bad. It's what we do with it. My kids, for example, my two at high school have got phones now. When they were at intermediate school, we got a third phone for the house, and we called it the whānau phone. And the whānau phone was available, so like when they were in intermediate school, let's say they went to an event, they could take it with them, but it wasn't theirs. But when they got to secondary school, they got phones. But I say this kind of thing, and people go, "Okay, boomer." That whole look. First of all, I'm Gen X, right? Let's just make that clear straight away. But we have restrictions on their phones. When they're at my house, they don't charge their phones in their bedroom. They put them out in the general space. They don't have their laptops in their bedroom. We've actually got a thing on the phone, an app on the phone that restricts some of their use. They can use their phone for an hour and a half a day, and then it basically turns their phone off to being a dumb phone. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, look, people might think that I'm heavy-handed and a bit of a boomer with that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to open up the alcohol cup and just go help yourself. It's not actually beneficial to that developing mind.
Oh, look, I think it's good. Like, I think it's really good. Like both my boys, they will come and ask if they can get on technology. I mean, they're on technology now
Same.
because when you open the door, there's silence. There's no noise.
Yeah.
You know? And but I mean, it's an incredible babysitter. But I love hearing them making noise and playing outside, and
Yeah.
going to have to break up scraps and all that sort of stuff. That are two boys growing up in each other's company. Like it's just it's how it should be, and I don't want them. They do. There are moments where they're both on the same game thing together, yelling across the room and playing some what is it, Roblox, which is the sort of young people online thing at the moment.
Right.
And they all get into different rooms, and for my oldest, it's his world. He's a techie. He's techie. He does little animations and all that sort of stuff. That's his world. He lives and breathes it. But the younger one, he loves getting out and kicking a ball and passing and stuff like that. So far sooner getting to embrace that.
Yeah, and I agree, and I would encourage parents. This has turned into like parenting with Josh and Pat. I would encourage parents that they're like, oh, my kid hasn't done X, Y, Z for so long, and like, for example, board games. So we probably buy 1 to 3 board games a year. We've probably got 15 to 20 board games in the house right now. And the reason that we play board games is because we've got board games in the house. you know, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, my kids never do that." And you go, "How many board games have you got in your house?" And they're like, "None." It's like, well, you know, there's a reason for that. My kids get out the back and sit on the outdoor bean bags with ukuleles, playing songs to the rabbits. Partly because I kick them out of the house sometimes, and I say it's sunny, get outside. But then once they're
Yeah.
out there, they do it. But then the flip side of that is, you know, me and them play Fortnite together on the PS4. It's great
Yeah.
fun. You know, there's a time and a place. I've introduced them to a heap of good movies that they never would have found without, you know, Dad's kind of comedy vault from the 1990s coming out. So there's a time and a place for everything. I love technology. I mean, look what we're doing right now. Technology is amazing. And there's a time and a place. And there's a time and a place to get your ass outside and take the dog for a walk, or for us to go down to the park, or to go to the dog park, or whatever it is as well. That's what I think. It's balance, isn't it?
And there's a reward process that goes with technology as well.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes the boys are going, "Oh, you're playing Warcraft again, Dad," and it's just like, well, um, who's paid for the game? Who owns the game? Who the internet connection?
Yeah.
Who's earned the time to do that? And they go, and I said, like I've everything you're doing in IT is only because dad and mum are putting it there for you. So sure, you can do that stuff, and when you're older, you can do it whenever you want.
Mm.
You can make those decisions, but you're in our house. We're supplying it all. There's a there's a reward process. So I mean, the youngest one, he he uh, he's ready to go. Oh, if I say you get this job done, can I play PlayStation after I do that, Dad?
Yeah.
Or can I get on IT? I go, yeah, actually you can. You've been a good kid, So there's that there's that sort of incentive that comes with it as well. I don't know if that's good parenting. I don't really know, but
Nah.
we mix and match. Got I love going down to Raglan and with the family especially, and we still have the broadband that gets in there, but you don't. There's no um, Vodafone and Telecom don't quite make it to us
Nice.
where we are.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to walk, half a k up the road, you can get reception. So that's kind of cool too. People go up to check their phones that way.
Yeah, that's nice.
But obviously, now that WhatsApp and all that sort of stuff, it makes it's still accessible in some respects. But it's such a nice place with the view and the environment and the vibe there. That's just you chill and you relax. And
So we're about to Raglan, didn't you go? You're further around by Whale Bay then? Are you out that
yeah,
side?
we're in Melbourne.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
I was lucky enough when we've got sort of my first lot of money with come through. I had my first house in Dunedin, and then once I'd done that, I I had great parents. They took us all the way around the world, and we did lots of crazy. I mean, when I say the world, New Zealand, and seen most of the North Island as a kid, via house buses and tenting and camping and stuff like that. And so, um, and then a couple of times I got to go and stay at family or friends' batches,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I always wanted to have a batch, for the family.
Nice.
And so when I kind of got my first house sort of sorted, and then the next lot of cash was coming through, it was like, well, what do I do with it? And I thought, I want a holiday home. And then it was like, well, do I get a holiday home that's just up the road? Or do I get a holiday home so that when I go there, I'm on holiday,
Right.
I'm stuck there. And so, because Raglan's a long way away from Dunedin.
So you were living in Dunedin and bought in Raglan.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit! That's a few days to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is cool too. Which
Yeah.
is cool too. I mean, I'm in Auckland now,
Yeah.
but I always envisaged that I was going to be living in Dunedin, and my thought process was, right, we're up, month off, Christmas time, school holidays, we're buzzing up there, and we take, or a week to get there. Do
Right.
you know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We do the roadie, we stop off, and kids check out bits of New Zealand and stuff like that, and it hasn't worked out that way. I got attracted to a bit of Auckland skirt, and then and I got stuck there. But it's you know it's different, but we love going down there. It's such a neat place,
Yeah.
and when people come in, I say, you realize if you're not on your social media shit, you're going to spend the entire time sleeping and
Yeah.
doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all go, but when you get there, just through the design of the house and the constant of the sea just rolling through, sure enough, come 2 o'clock, they're snoozing on the couches or out in the front and the lounges, and yeah,
Yeah.
everybody has that siesta sort of timeline, and but we're all up early still in the morning. Might have late nights, but we're still getting up because dad's climb out to get in the water early before try and beat everyone in the water. You know, it's
It's the
it's
life.
great. It is a life.
And also, I guess thing living in Auckland, like I grew up in Auckland, and our holiday place was Mangawhai Heads, which the people
Oh
who
yeah,
don't know are an hour and a half north, whereas Raglan's an hour 45, 2 hours south off from
it's
Wellington.
for us to be at the house from home. It's 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's an easy 2 hours, and probably with that new motorway, mate, they've just put in. It's probably taken a good 15 to 20 minutes off it.
Nice, mate. There's a big difference between going to your holiday place if it's an hour 40 to 2 hours. Just that difference seems to make it feel like you could almost do it in a day trip pretty easy. Shoot back up to Auckland for a day's work and come back again in the same day, pretty easy.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I've got no problems, and only it's probably surfers feel this way. I've got no problems driving 4 hours to go for a surf
Yeah, right.
if I know it's going to be pumping.
And skiers as well. Skiers they go down to the
Yeah,
mountain for the day.
it's just what you do,
Yeah, yeah.
if that's your love. I can't remember the last time I was on snow. I need to sort that out.
Hey, speaking of kind of technology and stuff, when we were talking last week, I wasn't aware of this, and I don't want to apologise. Actually, I used to always hate those people when you said what you did for a job, and they go, "Oh, I never listen." And you're like, oh, I don't care. But I wasn't aware that CGW was still going. So what's happening with Crow Goes Wild at the moment? What are you guys actually doing?
Yeah, so man, it's like media have just been absolutely sideswiped by this COVID thing, and but through I guess the genius of Rick Solizzo
Mm-hmm.
and um, James Copeland, who sort of produces, and also Andrew Mulligan and James McConey, we've managed to create an online sort of version of it, which we do just 2 shows a week, and then they fill the rest of the week's shows with historical stuff.
Mm.
And yeah, like, and it's great because we're important to Sky. You
Yeah.
know, we've all kept our jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
we've taken some pay cuts and like the rest of everybody and stuff like that. But so we've been producing 2 shows a week, and a lot of the same content, I guess, that you've seen. I think because we jumped on it so quickly
Mm-hmm.
and embraced it so aggressively, it felt like when we saw TV1 and TV2, TV3 doing their news and their versions of how they dealt with it, felt like that they were copying us.
Right.
you know so and I mean, initially it was Skype, and then we rolled on to involving Zoom, and then Blinder, because that gave us obviously we could get both files, and it changed up the whole dynamic a little bit of being able to have two people on the screen at the same time, all that sort of stuff. And so it's been a work in progress. We also uh, like kind of trying to. I don't think anything's going to change for us in terms of what we're putting online for the show till sort of mid-June, maybe.
Mm.
And maybe we get to return back to a bit more regular, sports back on the game. We should have the NRL in full swing with with hopefully, obviously, well, not a version of New Zealand rugby.
It's
I
going to
don't
be
know what that's.
interesting, eh?
Oh, it'll be fantastic, mate. It's going to be disappointing not to see some of the those top tier super teams rolling into town and testing what's going to be. But at the same time, it'll be great to see these super sides cracking some out. You know what would be really interesting? I mean, I know there's only a short period of time, but most of the NPC teams would have been kind of starting to formulate. It would have been, it'd have been kind of cool if they could have cracked, like made it, got like just like picked another team just to see
Totally.
how they would, like a random sixth team and see how they got on, like just chuck them together and everyone, because I'm sure some of those guys that don't have super contracts would be just fizzing on the idea of being able to tune up and have a bash at our super teams.
Kind of like I just as you were saying that, I was trying to think where would it be located, but maybe it's almost an itinerant team. Maybe it's like a New Zealand representative or an NZ15
The
team.
Barbar, it'd be
Yeah,
a Barbar
barbars. Yeah,
version
yeah, yeah.
of second, taken from whoever they want to take, who didn't get contracts, who's still in town.
Yeah. And they
Because
always play away because they don't have a home team.
yeah, yeah.
I was talking to
No, but
Nigel. I was talking to Nigel Yeldon about this just the other night. Actually, the idea of I'm quite excited about just seeing New Zealand against New Zealand, and I've always been a bit of a fan of the idea. I'm not saying it's ever going to happen, but of sort of basing a New Zealand competition on the NRL and just turning it
yeah.
into the best rugby in the world, full of international players as well as local players. 10 teams across New Zealand, sort of thing. But I mean, this might be a little glimpse into that, but a very, very little glimpse, I guess.
Well, it's interesting. Like if you go back into the amateur sort of breaking into professionalism and stuff like that, Super 8, Super 10, those numbers existed.
Yep.
The amateur thing. And Super 10 was as amazing as it was, um, because you got to play these international teams. They were effectively that Super team was Otago
Yeah.
or Auckland, and so that was just icing to be able to play those internationals, and then you roll into the national NPC season. And the NPC was next level in those days. Like just in terms of crowds and the crowd running onto the field at the end of the day,
Yep.
and kids scoring tries on where they've just watched their
Yeah.
mentors doing it. And, it's just I missed that part of it. Like 2 hour signing sessions.
Right.
In the freezing cold of Dunnos with a jacket still in your
The House of Pain.
sweaty clothes, House of Pain. Yeah, like it was a magical period in time. And I, sometimes when I look at the young guys today, and they actually get to miss that. They've missed that. That real engaging with the fans.
I think there's one step removed from that as well, and it kind of everything's jumped up a level. So what, like you say, NPC, that used to be the pinnacle of, provincial rugby. Then Super Rugby comes along, so it kind of jumps up one, which means club rugby, which sort of used to be the pinnacle of your local clubs, is now NPC. Because I still tell the story. I remember in the 1980s about going to see Marist play in Auckland, and I'm about 2 meters away from that curtain over there, being that far away from JK. That's where he was standing in his Marist gear on the thing. And then 2 people inside him was bloody Bernie McCahill. Then on the back of that scrum was Zinzan Brook, and in the bloody scrum was Robin Brook. And we'd see them when they play for their clubs, and you'd stand on the grass, without exaggeration, 2 meters from the greatest winger in the world.
I know.
And those days I kind of go, whoa, that's something. Whereas now that's sort of gone because they get picked out of the club rugby and they don't go back and they go to NPC. And then they get picked out of NPC and they kind of don't go back and they go to Super Rugby.
Some of them don't even make club rugby.
Yeah, right.
Straight out of school, into a super situation, because of I guess that whole what do they call it, with a development squad situation, So there's still I'd assume there's still some players that miss fall through the cracks and miss their opportunities.
Yeah.
and never become super players who probably would have been good super players. But um, I'd say the current system doesn't it allows for more guys to stay in the system longer to go through. But a lot of those players now, especially in club rugby, they
Yep.
go, "Well, I'm not going to make it into Super and NPC, so why should I play club?" But they were often the stalls, you know.
Yeah.
Some of those 30, 35-year old guys who were still just living and breathing rugby on Saturday night
Yep.
and and were just tough bastards, man.
It's
Hard to play against. But as a 18-year-old coming in or 19-year-old coming in and playing in that environment, crikey, I learned a lot of what good, genuine life skills
yeah.
of managing tough people like that, because I mean, there was a lot more shit going on than there is in today's rugby.
Totally. Totally. But those days of, and I'm pretty sure that they did do this, that they'd have, certainly in the Auckland competition, they'd have the club finals on a weekend when there was other things had finished up. So they'd have the
Oh yeah,
club,
they never had any. There was
yeah,
never
no
any
clashes.
crossover. I remember, like, I did a fair bit of coaching when I went back to university the second time after I come back from overseas, and we had nine of our team make it into the Otago squad,
Hmm.
and so they had one of their preseason build-up games,
Yep.
and so they weren't available for the final.
Mm.
What the? It
And it
just
was
doesn't make any sense to
it,
me, man.
it was the reverse. I remember that sometimes players wouldn't be available through the club season because they'd be playing for Auckland or Waikato or someone like that.
Yeah,
But
well, that's
it always seemed the final they were available. So you'd go to Eden Park and you'd see Marist versus University, and of course I think University had Grant Fox playing for it,
yeah.
and these are the players, and you'd see them in their club teams. The finals would always be at Eden Park, but certainly in the weeks before, you'd go see them standing a metre away from them. It was freaking awesome. Hey, I know that we're going to be about an hour, and I want to give you that time to shoot off. But I saw a headline this week that the gorgeous and wonderful and amazing Jonah would have been 45 this week. Would have
Yes.
been his birthday. John Alomu is the guy who made me finally feel like a grown up. You have these moments in your life where you feel a bit older and you realize you're growing up. Like, for example, I've always said when I bought a wheelbarrow. When you start buying things that serve no purpose other than work, you're like, oh, shit, I guess it's time to grow up. When Jonah got picked for the All Blacks, it was the first time me realizing, holy crap, I'm older than All Blacks. And then you go through that next 10 years and then you realize, shit, I'm older than all of the All Blacks. And it's a bit of a wake up call. But I was just wondering maybe if you had anything, you played with him. I still, he's every time I see an image of him pop up or something, I always go, oh, is there anything you want to share about Jonah before we say goodbye and you get back to your kids
Oh,
playing
look, mate,
Fortnite?
I guess it was a bit of a sign of the times for me. I feel privileged, um, first and foremost, that I got to play amateur and professional rugby. Um, it was, like, yeah, and I say to people still to this day that the best rugby I ever played was amateur rugby.
Right.
Professionalism had its qualities and its great ingredients, but for just genuine, good, old fashioned rugby and having a great time doing it, amateur was just mind blowingly cool.
Mm.
And in that period, I got to play with some of the greats of that decade, and Jonah Lomu was key and foremost. I think he, to me, was the first genuine sporting superstar in New Zealand
Yep.
and for rugby worldwide because nobody had seen anything like it.
Mm.
This was the guy. This was a guy that was the size of a South African lock, and most wingers would have been at their biggest 100 kg in any one place in New Zealand, and this kid was at that time was clocking 118 or something like that, and when he'd have a season of eating too much, something in excess of that, but could do still do sub 1100s, and that's just mind blowing, when you think about that. And then on top of that, he had a natural ability for being able to step and scythe and still run over people, and that's so he was a treat to watch and a treat to play around, too. I always got coined as getting tries off Jonah, but I, I feel there's a lot of footage that shows me giving him the last pass as well. But that's what everybody remembers. So, and then I think that whole transition, you had was it 93 or 94 where it didn't go quite so well for him, and he got dropped, and they never took him away at the end of the year, and it was sort of felt like maybe he wouldn't recover because come in at an 18-year-old kid and then get
Mm.
dropped.
Against
Um,
France, and they keep kicking
yeah,
it just kicking it over his head, and that
yeah,
and that was a weakness at that time.
yeah, and so, but Laurie Main's kind of a cunning man, really, when you think about what the team that he put together in '95. I think he always had a plan of where he wanted to go and the players he wanted to pick, and so the people that he sort of put on the sideline for certain periods and stuff like that there was a plan of getting them where he wanted to get them, and with the camps and everything. So when he turned up at 1995 at that World Cup, no one had ever seen anything like him, you
Right.
know. And but he also had an incredible team that, and Jonah would say this as well, had a team that really supported his attributes, you know, and allowed him to get the ball with some room to either go in and out or over the top of someone,
Yeah.
and that's a great luxury to have, I think, when you're a young player and you can just get to do and showcase all the things that you do really well.
Yeah.
And but he was a massive, as much as he was a massive man, had a massive heart,
Mm.
and he was fun to be around, and I mean, we've all seen the reports of he was just forever giving to people. You know, he would stop and talk to everybody. We all remember the headphones back when he was younger, but I think he realised that he just couldn't keep everyone out all the time,
Right.
and so rather than just keeping them out, he just brought them in, and that's, I think, also part of the reason why he became as worldwidely followed,
Yeah.
because he portrayed that side of things as well. And but yeah, like for me, my relationship with Jonah is like we were kind of the two that kind of always sorted the movies out. Knew what was going on, and it was either him and myself just going on our own, sort of Thursday, Friday night before for a game, um, or we'd let everybody know that such and such a movie was on, and there'd be 20 of us going down. So
Nice.
it's but I think those times when we'd be walking down to the movies together, that's my memory of Big J. Um, he's yeah, and yeah, some of the stories he'd tell you of his background and where he came from, and the things he'd done, and it always amazed me to see the end result of where he got to,
Mm.
and that's credit to the man. And I always, it was such a shame, because like that illness too was already kicking in at 1995, unbeknown to all of us. Um, and so, did we ever really see the best of Big J? I don't know.
That's a scary thought, eh?
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
is a scary thought.
My old man was involved with rugby referees through the 80s and 90s quite heavily. He's got a photo of him with Jonah. So I'm 191 centimeters, so that's sort of 6'3", probably six
Yeah,
four when I've got shoes on and I'm standing up fucking straight. But of course he's got a picture of himself with Jonah. My dad had a lot of time spent in Fiji, a couple of bit of
Yeah.
business interests over there, and one year he took this photo of him and Jonah to Fiji with him, and as many people as he could, he'd show the photo and go, "This is my son," and all the Fijians were like, "What? Your son is Jonah?" And I think it got him many free ginger ales, as my dad is a bit of a teetotaler. Um,
Oh, that's comical. Oh, look, he was just an amazing man. Like in terms of the athleticism, I remember we played at Pukekohe. We got to play against, as you do in that the NPC situation. And I kind of rate myself about 50-50 on my tackle front with Big J. And I
okay.
remember, I saw them running this move, and I could see Jonah coming in from behind, and I thought, right, I've got you here, dude. And he came, and sure enough, he got the ball just as I thought he'd get the ball, and I rolled in, and I just, when you feel it, when the shoulder just comes in, and you feel them fold, and it started to go down, and everything was fine. And I thought, right, I'm really monstered in here. Cut him in half, and next thing he's running through John Leslie and scoring the ditch under the posts. And I look down and I go, how did this happen? How has he got through me? Like I had him, and I looked at my hands, and in both sets of the hands, I had a piece of his shorts.
Oh, you serious?
Yeah.
He
So
literally
I
he ripped himself out of the shorts.
told him, and then technology let me down because I'd have
Oh, that is
good to go
beautiful.
and get a new set put on. They just completely come off. But and that's just the sheer strength of the man.
Hey, you got time for one more quick question?
Buddy, I'm yours, mate.
All right,
It's all
bro.
good.
As a sports nut, I'm sure you've had a keen eye on The Last Dance, and this the world is talking about the goat in the NBA. Who's the greatest? Who's the greatest? And it's is it LeBron? Is it Michael? Is it Kareem? Is it Wilt? And I guess just from talking about Jonah and stuff, I'm just wondering. I'm actually I understand and I'm aware that it's very difficult to compare players with players, especially in different positions. But who would be the people in rugby, maybe that A you've played with and B that you know of, maybe there's some you haven't played with, that you would think are kind of the greatest rugby players there's ever been?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an ingredient of personality that comes into all those situations as well. As much as you know, they showcase sheer talent and whatnot. There's a personality that's involved in that sort of, why people adhere and for me as well. So I often find a players better because I enjoy who they are as a as a person.
Right.
They present. And so for me, Colin Meads is hard to go not to go from. I never got to play with him. I never really watched him as a player, but to interact with him as I did with when he was a manager and post that my and some situations that I was involved with personally with him. I struggle not to put him first and foremost. But Richie McCaw, just purely for his longevity in the
Mm-hmm.
game, and his application for the duration of that longevity, and the way he played the game with tactical sense, strength, and just getting on with it. Um, it's a hard not to put him first and foremost.
Yep.
But then it's like, well, he was a workhorse and skillful in his leadership. He's kind of up there, isn't he? But
Mm.
then you go, wow, is rugby about that, or is it about someone like Jonah? But then Jonah never had a complete game. He just was when he was attack, he was sheer brilliance.
Yeah.
But but out of the people that in my mindset of that I just used to constantly just go, I can't believe that dude did what he just did in that situation.
Mm.
It's Jeff Wilson.
Right.
Lottie, I don't think as good as Dan Carter and Bodie Barrett and all those guys were, Jeff Wilson just did it all. He could kick, he could pass uh, at the right time, the right pass whenever he wanted off both hands. He could kick off both feet, kicks, goals, drop kicks, kick and chase, change up a gas, step and then on the flip of it, he could nail you in a tackle. He just did it all. And, bar one moment in history where he probably could have made himself in the Jonah status when he could have won that game.
Is that Gregan's
George
tackle? Yeah.
Gregan. That's probably the only moment in his whole career. But how did he get there?
Yeah.
To even try and score the try?
Yeah.
Everybody forgets that part of it. Yeah, it's really hard, and I'm sure everybody have. But if just for sheer in the time and what I've seen in mind frame, probably Richie McCaw. Yeah.
Do you have a player that you can think of that you liked watching most of all? Because I straight away when I'm thinking about the greatest player, I'm going, actually, you know who I liked watching most of all? And that was the Paikokariki Express. I mean, just watching and just seeing. I mean, it's interesting. I'm thinking about Colin Meads, and I'm kind of going, he's similar to actually Jonah, and actually people had never seen it before. I've got that image of him with, running with the ball in one hand, just down the sideline like a winger as a lock. And I'm thinking with Christian Cullen as well that I can still remember. I think it was Samoa. It was one of the island teams with his first game, and he got hit in the hardest tackle I've ever seen in my life, and he just bounced back up and kept going. Like, I thought, okay, this new kid's playing. Okay, he's no longer playing. He's now finished his All Black career, and he bounced back up. And something about the speed and strength of that man. I've recently looked at a highlights package on YouTube of Christian Cullen, and I think he was the person I liked watching most of all the All Blacks I've watched and rugby I've watched.
Yeah, Crowbar was definitely next level when he had ball in hand. He took options that other people couldn't see, and that's probably for a guy that just slept all day and every day while he was playing. It used to stun me how he'd just suddenly wake up and just have all this energy. He was next level. Yeah, I don't know. Like he was great to watch. But I mean, I suppose I spent more time when you're playing with him. Your appreciation is quite distinctly different to watch. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. Like actually watching someone. I've never really thought about that. Um, I probably it would be other sports that
All right.
that I would formulate that watching thing, and it's hard from in that period when I was there, like in terms of Kelly Slater, it's hard not to figure his name in, and even Michael Jordan. Crikey, man!
Yeah.
I watched that from when he started to just being next level, and you just expected him to take the clutch shot.
Yeah.
Every time, every situation, you just expected it.
Yeah.
There was no reason not to.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the reason. I think that's the reason that he's not even arguably the GOAT for basketball, but is the GOAT. Is that pretty much all the other players who are in that conversation, be it LeBron or Kobe or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Magic or Larry, or maybe Larry might equal. I was going to say the one difference is he's the one with the ball in the last play every time. The other players, Larry Bird, is fair to say Larry Bird would always be that person as well. So we'll put those two other people who would always have the ball in the last play, whereas all the other players, they would feature in the last play, but you may not expect them to make the last play. But for Michael and for Larry, those were the two guys who you did. I think that's one of the ones that elevates certainly Michael, but the two of those may be above some of the others when it comes to that conversation.
And to be honest, I don't know if there is a person like that in rugby.
Yeah, it's true. That's
You
fair. So
know?
if you use the same thing, if you're 25 meters out and you have to score a try, because actually you're not going to put it in the hands of a Case Muse, are you? Because that's not his role in that job. His role is to set a platform so you can give it to someone else to try and cross the line. So maybe it's not even a fair analogy of the last play.
No. But I mean, the only person I could think of in that situation is Goldie, because I don't know how many times he did it for us in Otago. You know, he just, I don't know, something out of nothing,
Yeah,
golden touch. That's why it was cool. You know, it was called Goldie. It wasn't really because of his locks, it was because he had the golden
golden
touch.
touch. And you were
Yeah.
called Crusher because what? John Aloma crushed you and left his shorts in your
My
hands.
nickname's my nickname's hilarious in some respects. So, um, way back when I first started playing with Jamie Joseph and Aaron Penne, and I guess we had a bit of an impact in that '93, and it was quite um, like, oh, who's this kid, and look at what this trio was doing, because we were playing the game distinctly different to any other loose trio pairing, just because of the traits we each brought.
Yep.
And uh, this guy came and did an interview, and he interviewed us all for about 15 minutes, I think. And then he wrote this story up, and it was in some magazine. And I remember when it came out, he said he had the boys' nicknames. He had JR, which for Jamie Joseph, obviously for JR Hewing, he's the boss man.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember, it was either Fetanui or Calfhead for Aaron Penne, obviously because he's got a big head. And then they hadn't asked me about the nickname, so they just invented one.
Oh, really?
And they said they put Crusher because of his bone jarring tackles.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and going, oh, that's, because at that time, the coach, Gordon Hunter, had nicknamed me the Kid. And, and I was the youngest member in our four pack at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of only really known at that if I had a nickname, or Gorilla, which I'd had my whole life. So, or Ape Arms is usually associated as well. But that was the only thing. And it was in this, Stu Forster had read it in this office maybe 6 months on, and in the reception, and I started giving Stu a whole lot of crap and about some situation, and he goes, "Settle down, Crusher." And I showed my instant dislike.
Right.
Boys are on it,
and that's why it stuck.
That's it. And I knew it was a nickname when the fans started calling me Crusher.
Right.
Because getting called Crusher was just those boys of 26 odd or 30 or whatever it was in those days that called me. No one else would call me that. And then all of a sudden the fans started calling me as well. And so it was Crusher. And now I embrace it. Like I remember that's why my emails kind of has that in it, and rather than my name. Mind you, that's simply because when I try to get, I think I tried about 3 versions of my name back in the day.
Yep.
It was already gone.
Really?
Yeah. But people used to do that, didn't they? They used to
steal names. Yeah.
Try and sell them off to you and stuff. But I don't know.
Well,
so hence,
Josh, it's been an utter pleasure talking to you. I feel your whatever platform you play on, your PlayStation calling you, afternoon with your boys, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, I'll be lucky if I can get on it, getting those kids off it. It's a different world, man.
It is. Hey, it's been a blast. I've been looking forward to this chat for a long time. So thanks for giving us some time today. And dude, we're always here in lovely Dunedin. Next time, maybe I won't be in my bedroom, but I'll be in my new studio downstairs. That'll be the plan that we're building this weekend, hopefully. Fingers crossed. And yeah, always a pleasure. Tell people about if they want to interact with Crowd Go Wild now, what's the best way to do it?
Obviously, we've got our own Insta. We've obviously got Facebook, and Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. on Prime. It obviously gets re-shown on Sky Sport as
Yep.
well, all the different sport channels at different times. But I couldn't quote those to you, man. I'm not
But
good
if they want to
with
see the actual episodes you're doing at the moment, Tuesdays and Thursdays are the two nights they're going to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I usually crop up on either one or the two of them, so yeah, it's good fun. They're a good crew. We have a great time doing what we do, and we don't mind laughing at ourselves.
Sounds good. Hey, Josh, thanks for your time, dude. It's been a blast.
Pleasure, Pat.